So we talked about negation briefly before we got out of here on Thursday. Let's just take 30 seconds and go ahead and write down the negation of H, which of course is written like that. What does it actually translate to when you write the sentence? Yeah, absolutely. Check with your group too. Ted, your group. Doesn't have to be you.
Hey guys. I wrote morning class didn't score a higher average.
The morning class, you said didn't?
Yeah.
Okay. Didn't is fine. Did not is fine. And that's really all you need there. Okay? Everybody good? Okay. Next, let's talk about quantifying statements. Okay? Once we learn how to quantify statements, then just like we did earlier, we will negate those. Okay, so it's kind of very important that you understand what these are all about. Okay. Here's a nice table down here. I would recommend that you become very familiar or acquainted with it. The goal here is that you don't have to rely on this to form a sentence that is quantified, but if you forget, you could always look here, okay? The most important thing, though, to know is what two sentences are equal to each other, okay? And a good way to remember at least these first two, this one's pretty easy because it's a positive sentence. You got a positive here and then a positive there. You guys see what I'm talking about? All are, okay? In order to have something be the same, what you essentially do for these two is do the opposite of both parts of the sentence, okay? So what is the opposite of all? None or no, right? And what's the opposite of are? Are not. It's just a double negative, both. Does that make sense? Okay? So for example, if I said all rats are rodents. What's another way to say that? Yes. So how would you say that? That's close. It's not quite. Jared?
No rats are not rodents.
No rats are not rodents. Yes. Okay. So we do need both. We do need both there. No rats are not rodents. Okay. Let's try another one. No dogs are cats. That should be pretty clear. Yes.
All dogs are not cats.
Very good. Okay, does that kind of make sense there?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about the sum now. Okay. When you guys see the word sum, that is synonymous with at least one. So for example, if I said some people have a birthday in August, okay, how would I prove that that is true? If I say some people were born in August, okay, how would I prove that that's a true statement? What would I need to do? And how many would I need? At least one. So as long as, very good. If I find one person that says, hey, my birthday is August 12th, that's essentially verifying the statement. Does that make sense? So that's why some and at least one are synonymous. Okay? So let's try an example here. Some tomatoes are green. And they are delicious. Don't write that down, but they are delicious. Have you ever had fried green tomatoes?
Fried is different. Raw is disgusting. People are like, oh, this tomato's so sweet.
Okay. How else could I say some tomatoes are green?
At least one tomato
At least one tomato
is green.
is green. Or, what's the other option? The other option is to negate or do the opposite of both parts, right? So if I say some, we can say not all tomatoes are not green. Okay. Now, this one's kind of a goofy way to do it. It's not very frequently used, but it is equivalent. Okay. What makes more sense is the black and the orange. Okay. I'm not going to do an example of the last one, but it's the same idea. Some, at least one, are, and it's just you just need to make the sentence agree with all the different parts of the sentence. So you're just changing the verb there, but no different. Okay? Any questions on that page? Okay, let's move on. All right, so now this is what I was kind of getting at a little earlier, because this is going to help us understand what a negation is when we have a quantified statement. Okay? So let's talk about this real quick. And look, a good way to think about how to approach these is you're arguing with someone. Okay? One person says one thing, like no one passed the exam, and you want to argue with that individual. Right? So how would you argue? Well, now you would say something like, if they're wrong, you would say what? Think about it. If Jared comes in complaining that he got an F on the first test and says, "Man, no one passed that test," that's all you need. All he is, Jason, right? Jason would come in here and be like, "That's not true, Jared. I passed," right? And that would be enough to invalidate his sentence. Does that make sense? So the evidence needed here would be to just find at least one. Whoop, I did that backwards. This should go over here, guys. Evidence needed to prove false. Find at least one person who passed. And now, if Jared were to argue back, what would he have to do to prove that he's right, that no one passed? Yeah, it's not just enough for him to say, well, look, I didn't pass.
Ask everybody.
He's got to ask every single person, and he's got to check to see whether or not that's true, and all of them would have to have failed. Does that make sense? So here, I'm going to change the words a little bit, but ensure everyone failed. So check or ensure that everyone actually did fail. Okay? All right, let's see if you guys can take a minute here and fill out the rest of the table on your own here without me. And then I'll ask group by group what we got. Well, it's not a live video, but yeah. I'm trying to build a database of all the notes for this course so that next year, when I teach it again, if I'm ever gone or whatever. Plus, this also helps you. I mean, everybody's here today, but
posting them all?
Yeah, on our calendar, there's a link. Yeah. So if you're ever gone, you'll be able to.
I'll subscribe.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, sign out and grab the pass. Okay, let's go through this table, you guys. These are all the different kinds of sentences that you're going to see as far as with quantifiers, okay? Pair these up. There are some that are essentially the same, or you can do the other way and say that certain ones of these are the negation of each other, okay? Let's just go through each one here. Let's see. Andrew, your group. What do you guys think for the second one? If I say everyone passed the exam, how would I convince you that that's true? So you verify, very good. Check all scores. To confirm. Okay? And if you're going to come in here and argue with me, what would you do? Say that again. And what do? If I say everyone passed, you're going to come in here and say, that's not true. What would your evidence be? There we go. Find at least one person who failed. Okay. Let's see. Lindsay, your group. What about the third row here? What? Very good.
Should be find the second one should be find that everyone either passed or failed. Or just passed.
Some students passed the exam. If we're trying to prove false, everyone failed, yeah. So check all scores. I mean, you can write this a bunch of ways, but okay. These are essentially the reverse, okay? So we can just talk about them real quick, but if I say no one failed the exam, how would I prove that true? If I say no one failed, everyone had to have passed, right? So I would have to have here are all the scores, look. No one failed, right? Now to prove that that's false, all you would have to do is find one person who failed, and now you have an argument. Does that make sense? See, all these words, I know they're kind of wordy and they may not sound like they're different, but this is the difference between, how many of you want to be a lawyer? I don't know. Maybe? Okay. But in court, these words are the fine details and differences between certain pieces of evidence being okay to admit in court and not. Okay. If we do everyone failed, I would need to show you all the scores, and they would all have to be failing grades. Does that make sense? This is just the opposite. If you want to argue, then you would say, well, one person passed, so not everybody failed. So that would be what you would need over here. Okay? Some students failed. It's kind of like this one here. Okay? You find at least one person who failed. That's enough to show that it's true. To prove that it's false, now you would check all, and then all of them would have to have passed. Okay? All right. Table number 2. Again, we're not reading everything or going through all the details here in the notes, but they're there for you. The idea is that you don't have to use this table or memorize a formula, but that it should just make sense to you. Okay? So let's start by first writing an equivalent statement. Okay? So if you need to look back for now at the previous table or examples, feel free. All males smoke. How else could I say that so that it means the same thing?
All males smoke.
Without changing males.
Every male smokes.
No males do not smoke. Okay? So whether you focus on all males smoke or no males do not smoke doesn't make a difference, but if you're going to argue, that's a great way to think of negating something. So if someone has this bogus information. It says all guys smoke. How would you form an argument? So how would you say that's not true? You could say some males do not smoke. You could also say at least one male does not smoke. Theoretically, that would prove it. Whoever said that, that would prove it. But we want to write down just the required. Does that make sense? All right. Michael, let's go to your group. Doesn't have to be you, but if you want to volunteer and answer here. How else could we say no females pass the exam? All females did not pass the exam. Very good. Now, could you use, instead of did not pass, what else could we say? Failed. That's fine too. Okay. And now to negate that, no females passed or all females did not pass, how would we negate that? Very good. At least one female, what? Passed. Okay. Let's just jump down to D because these are going to be similar, but some Math 101 students, how could I say the same thing as some?
At least one Math 101 student that completed their homework on time.
Okay, so at least one Math 101 student. Yep, sorry about that. Oh, I did that again. Okay, so this is the equivalent part. The negation now. Okay, you always go from weak to strong when you're negating. What I mean by weak is this is just one person, right? How do we make this a strong argument? What is it? Every, yes. So we could say every or all Math 101 students completed their homework on time. Okay. Do you guys see the connection there? When we're negating, all becomes at least one or some, whatever you prefer. No, same thing, at least one or some. Okay, when we're going the other way, we got to go to all or none if we wanted to. Okay? Any questions there? All right, the last part of the notes is essentially just drawing a graphical representation of all these statements. Okay? So if we look over here, how many of you are familiar with a Venn diagram? Well, you've heard of it, right? Okay. So for those of you that don't remember or might have forgotten, okay, a Venn diagram, typically, you have circles to represent sets. Okay? And depending on how it's worded, they could be two completely different sets. You can have one inside the other. You can have part inside of the other one. It just depends on what it says. Okay, so I'll do this one. I'll do the hard one here. all males smoke. So in this case, I would have one circle that represents, I'll call it S, but all the people that smoke, right? Where would the male circle go? Inside. If I put the circle outside, that would be saying what?
They don't smoke.
No males smoke, right? You guys see how that works? Okay. What if I change this to at least one male smokes? Part of it, yeah. So some outside, some in. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's try this one. No females passed the exam. So one circle. Let's say this is females. I'm going to write FEM to not think that means failing. Okay. Where would the pass circle go? I hear both answers.
Oh, wait, pass?
Yeah, no
Outside.
females passed.
Outside.
Has to be, so here's the pass circle. Does that make sense? So everyone that passes over here, unfortunately, females did not in this problem. Okay. Here we have athletes and completing homework. Where does homework go? Inside and out. Very good. Okay. And let's actually color in what set we're talking about. So here we're talking about all the males that smoked. So this is the set I'm talking about. What would this have to be on the outside?
Females.
These are the females that smoked. Does that make sense? Because all the males are represented by this circle. So if we have a set that represents everyone who smokes, if you're not in the male circle, you're going to be in the female part of it. So that's got to be outside of that. Okay? No females passed the exam. That's this one here. Some, which part would I shade if I'm talking about?
The one that
The middle, yeah, the overlap. Very good. Okay, last one. We have Math 101 students. So all the students in Math 101. And we also have a completing homework set. So what do you think? In, part, or all out? Part, okay. So then this is completing homework on time. And so now what part is the population here that did not? So this part that's not this part, is that what you said? This part. So this part, but not the overlap. That's what you said, right? Okay. Very good.